Go live.
All right, and then we're about to go live right now.
I thought you were wearing the gray t-shirt. I'm wearing the white one tonight.
We need to coordinate a little better.
Yeah. We're
All right.
no colors tonight. We're not going color shirts tonight.
All right, I'm just going to let it roll for a couple seconds. Thank you all for that are hopping in with us right now. We're going to start in just a second. Welcome to Mavs Sports Take, episode 11 if you haven't been with us before. Welcome, everyone, now to episode 11 of Mavs Sports Take. Almost our 3-month anniversary here, me and Mr. David Turner. If you're tuning in for the 11th time, of course, we thank you for coming back. If you're tuning in for the first time, we thank you for joining us tonight. We are currently live, 8:30, actually 8:44 Eastern time now on my Twitter handle, which is @RiseAndDraft, bringing you everything and anything you need to know, NFL, college football, NFL draft, business. We cover it all here. We thank you all again for taking some time. David Turner and myself brought you an interview with strength and conditioning expert Kyle Thorne this past week. If you have not taken a look at that, I would definitely go check on any platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, whatever you get, and wherever, whatever, whenever, wherever you get your podcast, we got you covered. Go check it out, Mavs Sports Take. Tonight, we're going to, of course, talk some NFL. We're going to talk some college football, what stuck with us this past week. But we're also going to bring on Mr. Mike Singer of Rivals.com, Blue and Gold Illustrated, to discuss high school recruiting in particular. We're going to give you all types of perspectives. We're going to give you from a beat writer that covers recruiting. We're going to give you the perspective of coach staffs that are making a lot of decisions with kids that they have not had the opportunity to see in person. They're throwing out scholarship offers without even seeing these kids yet. And then, of course, from the player perspective, there's a lot of layers to this conversation. David, I think we're going to bring on Mike first. We're going to jazz it up a little bit. We're going to mix things up. Before we begin, how are you tonight, my friend? And how excited are we for episode 11?
Well, as you and I are both big Notre Dame guys, this is going to be really fun for us tonight to jump into Notre Dame conversation and get going on it and hear about recruiting. I mean, it's much like what we did with James Kirkland and Quentin Ganther Quinton Ganther a few weeks ago. You know, it's a story that I think really needs to be understood by our fans and our audience out there. These high school kids have been, really impacted on their lives by the NC2A rule of giving everybody a year back. So it's going to be a good conversation. I know you and I have been off air and we've both been pumped about getting ready for this. So I'm really, really excited.
Absolutely. And just this one's really fun for me because if you haven't been following along with me on Twitter, I just am starting now Locked On Irish for the Locked On network over there, covering everything Notre Dame with my good friend Joe DeLeon. So to talk some recruiting insider here, I had to bring on a Notre Dame guy, bringing on Mr. Mike Singer now joining us via the Zoom call, recruiting insider and editor for BGI News on the Rivals Yahoo Sports Network. Mike, been following you for a while, man. All your work, love the podcast, everything. Blue and Gold Illustrated. How's everything going for you, man?
Well, first of all, I appreciate that. Everything's going good. Can't complain. It's crazy times, and we'll get into all that and how that affects the recruiting world. But yeah, I mean, I can't complain, man. I'm blessed.
I hear you, man. And I know we definitely want to get heavy into the recruiting. Before we start, just general, I know you said everything's good. Just the state of the world, the way it is. How's the life of Mike Singer right now on a day-to-day basis, trying to navigate all this insanity?
Yeah, so typically for my job covering football recruiting and specifically with Notre Dame, I map out what I'm going to do for the fall in July. So I'll have, again, in the 7th month of the year, booked out through November. What game I'm going to be at. I really pride myself on. I'm going to go see these recruits in person. Anybody can just do it from their couch, and oftentimes I do as well because that's a huge part of it is being remote and because I can't see every single kid. But, I do pride myself again on going and seeing these kids in person. Well, it's really week to week right now. And like just this Monday, I decided, all right, you know what, I'm going to go see Prince Cully on Friday, go see, Notre Dame's linebacker commit. So, yeah, it's different, but at the same time, recruiting's crazy. My job is covering 17-year-olds, so that's just crazy within itself. So, this is just a little bit more, but again, it's always crazy.
Yeah, just a little added layer for you. I know, Mike, we wanted to. A few weeks ago, we had Mr. James Kirkland on, who is the director of player personnel over there at the University of Illinois. We had Quinton Gaither, who is a running back coach for Weber State. And we talked a lot about different perspectives of recruiting. Thought this would be fun to have someone that covers it, obviously, year round, and you're always on the recruiting trails. Wanted to give multiple perspectives to this conversation. So I wanted to start with the recruits currently, because we talk about, guys trying to navigate this offseason. Usually we're seeing guys, playing football. Some states that it just isn't the case right now. Some schools don't have the opportunity to really show what they have from a senior perspective. And then you add in the layer of, hey, there's an extra year of eligibility for college seniors now. So like, how is that going to affect the world? Taking us from the perspective of a recruit, from the player that is playing out their senior year, maybe hoping to get a couple offers here late. What is the challenges, and what is the best way, in your opinion, to maybe navigate that to the best of their ability?
It is so different from state to state, and even within different parts of the state, like Memphis, Tennessee, is different than different parts of the rest of the state. And I know there's parts of South Florida who they haven't even played yet this season. While in Indianapolis, they had like a solid 8-9 game regular season, and in Ohio they had 6 games and then the playoffs. So it is just different from state to state. You had some states cancel, come back. I know Minnesota is one of those, and then there's states that just didn't come back. They canceled it early, and certainly California comes to mind as the big one there. So there is different opportunities for different recruits. I know there's a padded camp, an 11-on-11 camp in Utah, where some recruits are going there for some exposure. So not only that, just to play some ball, they'll pay a lot of money to just go play some, or organized football. So, there's the obvious challenges for the kids who are not playing, that they're not getting their scholarship looks. There's going to be others who might end up at like a Kent State or something, whereas they should be playing for like an Ohio State, but they just fell through the cracks because they didn't get that camp invite because there was no camp. So there's a lot of those kind of things. And then, on the kind of like, all right, first world problem, there is someone who, might not get that bump up to 5-star status because of some of these reasons we've talked about. So the ripple effects of this calendar year with recruiting are completely unknown. And another thing is, we don't know how long this dead period is. So the coaches can't go see the recruits. Recruits can't come see the coaches due to the NCAA's dead period, which was enacted in March. That's set to run through the end of this calendar year. So that is a whole nother thing. Like, or it could, again, have these ripple effects through the 2023 classes where, these colleges are just kind of set behind and all this different stuff. So it's been completely bizarre. I've never covered anything like this recruiting cycle. It's been pretty unprecedented.
If I could, sorry, David, I just want to expand on that real quick if we can, Mike, because I know, so for Notre Dame recruiting, right, we're like nearing the end of having a full class, right? There might be like 2 to 3 spots, I heard you say on your last podcast. Like everything's pretty much set in stone here to a degree. Do you think that there's going to be any repercussions? Maybe not even Notre Dame specifically, but obviously covering them, maybe you could speak to it a little more, where might be scholarships pulled if there's some seniors that choose to take that extra year of eligibility. Do you anticipate that being an issue in any way?
Well, I don't know if Arizona State's situation was because of they had, seniors want to come back. But Arizona State, there was a couple of recruits who were committed to their 2021 classes who just tweeted out, our scholarships were pulled. And that's really bad publicity for the Sun Devils. But, as time goes by, people kind of forget about it. But that's obviously something I pondered a ton, kind of asked around with different sources. But I think Notre Dame specifically, they have a plan. There's just no way that they're going to be surprised, or maybe they could certainly be surprised. I mean, this is the world of recruiting in college football. There's always surprises, but I think they're going to have a plan. I mean, the fans will worry about the 85 number, like, oh, we're at 89 scholarships. Oh, we're so worried. Always works itself out. So even with this is crazy, but it'll work itself out. And I keep saying this on different podcasts, and I really need to dive into it. But I want to say that it's up to the school to invite it back. I don't think every senior can say, I want to come back. But also, it's a freebie for the freshmen and the sophomore. So it's just, it's going to be really difficult to navigate. I mean, I asked different sources like, hey, how does this kind of work with scholarship numbers? At various schools, just kind of get a feel. And it's a very fluid thing where, the NCAA has to do something, extend it to 100 or 105 to account for all these guys. Cause we don't know at different schools how many seniors do they have coming back. Like, so it's just a crazy thing.
Yeah, Mike, when we were talking to Quinton and James, they were saying, like Quinton's saying, scholarship money wise, if you bring a kid from out of state into state now, that money that you had is being chewed up by that out of state tuition and stuff, and the school's losing money because they're not playing and they're not gaining the money. So a lot of the different individuals are struggling, and schools, smaller schools, especially FCS level, are going to be struggling with recruiting, and they might only bring in a handful because, again, the coach walks in and says, and I'm not saying this happened at Weber, I know it happened at Wyoming. The coach walked in and said, hey, any of you guys that want to come back, you're welcome back. And so now they're up there, and they actually had a kid that walked on last year that was expecting to get a scholarship this year. But by the coach saying that kid who give him or if they're all going to stay. And my cousin, who's a high school coach in California, was talking about going through this as a high school coach, now trying to navigate it and understand where I should try to promote my kids, where I should not, and he's like, man, if they're not a top 300 right now, top 300 player, they're probably just not getting a scholarship because there's just not going to be enough room. And according to Quinton, the NCAA said you have 1 year to be over the scholarship cap money wise, not, but you have to get it back. So even if you extend past 1 year and all those freshmen and sophomores had freebies, and now your classes, like you said, the ripple effect might be through 2023, 2024 before we get it right? Corrected. Now, how do you overcommit? You got to kind of undercommit because you're not sure what all these freebies are going to be. So they made a blanket statement, which I just feel just kind of, they didn't walk it all the way through.
Yeah, David, I was shocked by the ruling. And here's the thing. Every Power 5 conference is playing now. The MAC is now back. I think every Division I conference, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is playing now except for, the Brainiacs, your Princeton and Yales. I think I want to say every other. So it's like, why do we even have this rule? Like, is there enough guys that are opting out? Like, why can't you just give them an extra year? I think if they can to reverse the decision, I think that might be the best thing to do. But they made that ruling, and that's been it as far as I know on that. So it's like I said, man, covering college football and high school football recruiting is just bizarre already. And no two recruitments are the same. I've been doing this for 7.5 years, and I still feel like I'm learning about recruiting every day. And then you have this year come along, and you know nothing.
Yeah. Now, you said there's a dead period where the kids obviously can't come on the campus and can't go, and the coaches can't go out. How much Zoom meetings are being handled right now? how are coaches going about even meeting the kids? Is it possible? Like, what's going on? Are they meeting them on social media? Like, if we have some high school kids listening right now, how do they get noticed? How are those departments working so they can try to get a look-see?
I have kids DM me on Twitter all of the time. They think I'm a college coach. I'm absolutely not. But the kids know to send their stuff out to as many people as possible. Again, I think they think I'm a college coach. I often, if I do respond, I'm like, hey, I'm not a college coach. If I did, I'd be making a lot more money. I wish I was. But yeah.
Especially at Notre Dame.
Yeah, especially at Notre Dame. Yeah. So it's look, you got to get your film out there as much as possible, especially the academic side, because if you're a young man who's got a 3.7 GPA, that sets you apart from, a kid who might have the same skill set as you, but has a 2.9. So yeah, get it out as much as possible. As far as how much virtual stuff is happening, it was really hot and heavy in the beginning. I mean, the virtual visit on Zoom was like, whoa, this is like new technology. Like, what is this stuff? I want to say Kansas was one of the first ones to do like a big virtual visit weekend where they had really specific stuff planned, and it was really neat. And then, a week goes by. Now everyone is doing virtual visits where you have the main recruiter on the call, then maybe the coordinator, and then you'll have like someone in the recruiting office to actually kind of go through the nuts and bolts of the presentation with a video included in the Zoom that's going on to where that recruiting office person's talking about it with the input of the coaches. So I've never been on one of those, obviously. I kind of hope to one day, and maybe sneak me in there. I get to watch one of those and just kind of be a fly on the wall. I'm not going to hold out too much hope on that. But yeah, I think it's probably not as much. It might be more for the 2022 class now. Those high school juniors that are now getting the Zoom calls more, but for the seniors who are still out there, who are uncommitted, they've done dozens of them already, and they might do like a quick Zoom or a FaceTime just to kind of see the coaches face to face. But the virtual visit stuff with those guys is kind of old news by now.
Mike, you talked a little bit about, just how your schedule might be a little more like fly by the seat, right? Like things are constantly changing. You talked about going to see Prince Kali, just kind of off the whim. What is that like, though? Because being in your position, I imagine those ability to be on the recruiting trail and talk to those kids, talk to their coaches, like how important that is. How much has that affected your job to do it to the highest degree that you can? And have you been able to supplement anything in any way to try to get along with these, I guess, normal times now, and to make the best of what is a very tough situation, obviously?
Yeah. Well, one thing about the travel is that you could get there, literally be there for warmups, game gets canceled. Like that hasn't happened to me, but you hear stories about games being canceled right before or all these things. So I just kind of crossed my fingers and on someone. Like I was up in Indianapolis October 9th to see a couple Notre Dame commits. Avon with 2021 5-star offensive tackle Blake Fisher against 2022 4-star lineman Joey Tsunoda, again, both Irish commitments. So that was like a really cool trip, but still I'm like kind of nervous that this could be canceled in any minute. And like, all right, now what? Non-refundable trip kind of deal. So it's a lot of communicating with the athletic directors and coaches, kind of going through all of the, what do I need to do and before the game. But, most of them have been pretty relaxed. But, I mean, in previous years, I wouldn't even tell anybody I come, and I just kind of flash the media credential and just get into the game. Now it's, everyone's pretty, well guarded about who gets into the games, which I understand. You need to have some protocols in place, obviously, but did that even answer the question?
I think it did. I think the biggest thing is, like, who knows, right? Like every day is kind of its own day right now, which makes everything so difficult. I want to ask, though, because I know David's got a great one for you, but you talked about Blake Fisher. He's a guy that I'm pumped up about, specifically. I just see this guy and I'm just like, that dude is a grown man at 17, 18 years old. Can you give us a preview of just Blake a little bit and maybe one or two other recruits that a Notre Dame fan should be excited about?
Yeah, well, obviously Blake, I mentioned this on my podcast at blueandgold.com after I saw him, but I talked to his offensive line coach, and I said, hey, is this, around, 2 or 3 hours before the game. So I said, hey, is Blake around? Can I just meet him real quick? And I'm like, holy crap, this kid is huge. Look, I'm about 6'3", 215. I'm a big dude. I don't often feel small, but Blake made me feel like a little child. He's just a big dude, and it's just it's unreal and kind of seems fake just how athletic he is for how big he is. Like, if he's 6'6", 330, he shouldn't be moving as well laterally and just shoving kids like it's nothing at the same time. And then, it's kind of, he's a big personality. So, he likes to, offensive linemen these days are very much more into, before they just didn't really talk much. And now you get a lot of guys who have big personalities, will want to talk, be active on social media. So, Blake's got his own little swagger on the field too. So he's just this new age offensive lineman who's super athletic while also being a mauler. Other 2021 commits to get excited about for Notre Dame. There's
got to be Buckner, right? Quarterback. I know.
Yeah.
Obviously a hot topic.
Yeah. So Buckner's the guy I've been able to see twice. Once at our rivals camp in Los Angeles, and then over the summer at the Elite 11 in Nashville. In my opinion, who's sharper in California. I know Notre Dame fans don't want to hear this, but his mechanics looked a little off to me. He looked a little rusty. He's kind of he wasn't really throwing with his lower half, just all pushing it with his arm. So it just looked a little funky. But I would say I saw every throw in that 3 days, and he had one where he rolled right, threw it 48 yards on a dime. So he is, and this might not be something Irish fans want to hear either, but because they've heard this before and didn't quite work out. But he is truly, when he runs the ball, he's like he's a running back. Like he's 6'2", 210. He's got tree trunks for thighs. He's just a big dude who really runs the ball well, and he's going to be pretty durable. I feel like he did miss his sophomore with kind of a freak ACL injury, but he's a big, durable dude who also just throws the ball really well, and he's kind of models his game after Aaron Rodgers. So he loves those impromptu, kind of just fling the ball passes. So he's good player, great kid, great family. He's the entire package. I couldn't be higher on Tyler Buckner as a prospect. As far as another name, I'll throw out Lorenzo Styles at receiver, a guy that Tyler's going to be really excited to throw the ball to. And a lot of fans want to see Lorenzo as a corner or safety because he's really good athlete and looks good on tape at both of those spots. But Lorenzo Styles is just one of the most fluid receivers I've seen. Just everything he does is just easy. 6'1", 170, 180, fast as heck, excellent with the ball in his hands. Just I love football players who are just really smart. Like you just tell they know the game of football. His dad, Lorenzo Styles Sr., played for the Ohio State Buckeyes, and I want to say he spent a few years in the NFL. So, you could tell that, he's grown up around the game, watches a lot of football, loves the game, just a smart player. And I mean, he's going to be big for the Irish.
Now, when you're covering Notre Dame football, how does that compare their recruiting and their obviously they got a big bankroll, right? They can do a lot of stuff. How does the recruiting for Notre Dame compare to other schools? Whether it be ACC, Big 12, Pac-10, like as you run across other recruiters, what's some comparisons or advantages Notre Dame?
Yeah. So one thing about me is that I did not grow up a Notre Dame fan. I mean, never disliked the program.
You're either with us or against us, baby.
I grew up a Georgia Tech fan.
Oh, the Ramblin' Wreck.
Yes, Ramblin' Wreck, hell of an engineer. Yeah, so I grew up a Tech fan, but then 7 years ago when I started covering football recruiting, I haven't followed them since. Just kind of follow whatever team I cover. So I've covered a bunch of different schools, like most high school football recruiting reporters. They grew up a fan of a school, and that's the school they cover. So they might not be able to answer this question super well, but I've covered, just probably a dozen schools in 7 years, kind of going from that grind of intern to part-time to full-time now. But yeah, so the biggest thing I always say, because I get this question a good bit, and the number one thing is just the quality of kids and their families is just amazing. You just know what you're getting all of the time, and they're just such great individuals. I would honestly consider a lot of the parents and high school coaches that I deal with of these kids just friends. So that's the biggest. You're just such good kids that you just really enjoy talking to all of the time. Other thing is obviously the academic portion's huge. If a kid is comparing school A to school B and they're pretty similar on all these football fronts, but hey, school A, Notre Dame's got this great academic prestige, and school B just obviously kind of lags behind in that area, then Notre Dame's a choice oftentimes. So Notre Dame is a special place, one of those places that the pandemic and the dead period has hit every school, right? I mean, it's hit Notre Dame as hard as everybody, but I would say harder for Notre Dame because it's just one of those places you have to see. Like, you get on campus, it just feels different than a lot of places. It's just a really beautiful place. So that's another thing about Notre Dame. I mean, obviously academics, everyone talks about the academics, but just how special of a place Notre Dame is. You got to see it, feel it, touch it. To really love it.
We had what was it, Ian Williams a few weeks ago, Ryan?
Yep.
You know,
Former Irish. I think 2008 to 2011. I think somewhere in that. He was at the tail end of the Weiss era and the beginning of the Brian Kelly era. So he talked a little bit about that, Mike. And I'll tell you, I've only been on campus one time, but I can just echo your sentiment here because it's just something like I want to get there super early when I get there. I just want to be there. Like, even if I'm not doing anything, like you walk past the mural, like it's just something about being there. And everyone just seems like in a good mood all the time. And so it's really refreshing. And you talked a little bit about maybe things that might be a little bit of a negative, right? Not being able to get out to Notre Dame. I want to talk to you and ask you about the negatives and the positives to recruiting for Notre Dame. What are the pitches that land kids more often than not? And what are some of the difficulties that Notre Dame might have giving to a student athlete potentially?
Yeah, well, touch on the academics. That answers both, honestly. I mean, for a lot of kids, that's a huge thing. But some Notre Dame, half of the 5-stars recruits, Notre Dame can't even really recruit because they don't have the grades. And then trying to land the other 15 5-stars, well, that's really difficult because every other school in the country wants one. So they seem to get about one a year, at least in these past few years. So, academics is, I would say that's the main negative, is that you miss out on some kids because you are Notre Dame. You have super high academic standards. The location is a bit of a negative for Notre Dame in that you don't have a big local recruiting base. Chicago, an hour and a half or so, Indianapolis, a couple hours. And there's just not a ton of recruits right there. And so they go in a lot into California and Georgia now, and up in the Northeast.
Arizona. I know that they're in Arizona. They try to pluck folks out here.
Yeah, not a ton, not a ton here and there. But Tosh Baker in the 2020 class, big time offensive tackle, they landed in Arizona. But Georgia's, again, I live in Atlanta because Notre Dame recruits so much in here. Covering recruiting from South Bend doesn't really do a lot for me because, again, there's just go cover Paul Mawala 15 times, like during the like, what am I going to do? And as far as positives, it's Notre Dame. Like I mentioned about the campus stuff, the tradition, the prestige of the football program and the history, that's a big deal. The recruits, coaching staff does a really nice job. My only criticism of the coaching staff is, just being absolute grinders and dogs on the recruiting trail 365 days a year. But otherwise, they do a really nice job connecting with recruits, especially when they get on campus. I think that's when the Notre Dame staff is really at its best, which has hurt them this year.
So when you're looking at recruiting trails, like you just said, that they lead through the South a lot, right? What other schools do you see? I mean, is it all just SEC down there and Notre Dame, or is it ACC, SEC, Big Ten, Big 12? Everybody's down there shopping.
Everybody's in the South. Are you kidding me?
It's a hotbed. What do you mean?
Oh yeah, everyone's here. I mean, when I used to cover Oregon State a couple years ago, they were in Florida, and then their Florida recruiter left for a different job, so they stopped recruiting Florida. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a few schools that don't, but I mean, just thinking about in Atlanta here, and guys that Notre Dame recruited that it didn't end up getting. I mean, USC's got a kid here, Stanford. I mean, it's everywhere, especially when you get down to Florida. Your Alabamas, your Ohio States, your Michigan. I mean, everyone's down in Florida. Notre Dame, not as much recently, because there's not that strong, private Catholic. There's not a ton of private Catholic institutions in the state of Florida that just really churn out a ton of prospects. Not to say there aren't that, but Georgia has a lot more, and Georgia's kind of become the new Florida for Notre Dame recruiting. They're in, and those kids have done really well recently. I mean, especially with someone like Kyle Hamilton. So, yeah, everyone's in the South, man. I mean, Florida, Georgia, Texas, California. If you're not recruiting kids from there, you're going to have a tough time winning.
And Mike, I know we've taken a bunch of your time here, so if we could end this, I don't want to go super in depth with the game coming up, obviously against Pitt, because you're the recruiting guy. But can you give us at least a score prediction? Do you think that Notre Dame takes this one this weekend?
What's the spread at? Is it 8 points? Does that sound right?
Somewhere in that ballpark, yeah.
Man, yeah. Yeah, so if Notre Dame was at home, you would think, they would get another field goal. So Notre Dame would be 11-point favorite. Yeah, so this is Notre Dame's first road game of the season. I think that's going to help them. Getting away from home, guys will really rally together. I'll take Notre Dame to cover. So how about 31-20? That's I haven't thought about a game prediction. I got to do it for blueandgold.com, but we'll go 31-20 Notre Dame.
I know that some Notre Dame fans are very, a little glass half empty a little bit, Mike, but I think they'll take 31 after that 12-point game.
No, they're most of my readers are more like glass quarter full, or 75% empty, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we want to thank you again, Mike, so much for coming on with us again. Mr. Mike Singer, recruiting insider and editor for BGI, Rivals, Yahoo Sports Network. Thanking you again, Mike, so much. It was awesome, man. It really was, just hearing a little bit into your story and just a little bit of the background. I think a lot of people got a lot of different perspectives, which is what we were really looking for. So we really appreciate it.
All right, guys, anytime.
Thanks, Mike. So, Ryan, what was your biggest takeaway from talking with Mike tonight?
I'll say, so a lot of the stuff he was echoing, I kind of experienced it firsthand, just being there. I think it's biggest takeaway I'd probably say is just, I'm still so fascinated with that conversation about if a ton of school, and this might not be Notre Dame specific, but for the ripple effect of if some of these college seniors choose to use that eligibility rule and they go back to school for the 2021 college season, how does that affect these recruiting classes of 20 to 25 guys? Is the NCAA going to be, are they going to be helpful to helping to, raising the scholarship number, raising the money, like all those types of things? I'm just really fascinated by the recruiting. And it's nice to hear that Notre Dame probably, there might not be that, kind of thing looming over them. But I think that that's a really interesting conversation that I think is going to affect more teams, more colleges than some people probably realize.
Well, what I think is Notre Dame's got a really high graduation rate already, and therefore it's like those guys graduate and they're like, well, I'm not going to go to the NFL, but I have a Notre Dame degree, so I can go into the marketplace and take this degree with me. And and go earn some money and move on with life. Whereas like other programs where that's not the case, where maybe these kids are still holding out hope and dream to get in the NFL, they're going to stick around, they're going to stay, and they're going to try to ride it out, and that will affect their programs. And like, Quinton was saying at the FCS level, he's got guys that aren't ever going to play, but they're taking you know, they're sitting out a year and they're doing this and that. So you have some misformed. And I think it's just a different level. I think Notre Dame, against the rich getting richer. Like he said, it's a very academic school. A lot of the top 500 don't even, top 5 recruits don't even have the GPA to get in. And so it's like when you're dealing with Notre Dame kids, their decision making is a little different than kids that maybe are at other schools, a little lesser academic wise, and football is all they got, so they're sticking around as long as they can. Now those programs aren't going to be there, and he even mentioned early in the conversation about maybe kids are at Akron this year or over the next couple of years, and they should be at Ohio State or something. And that's the same thing James Kirkland, when we talked to James about, he had said that too. You're going to have some kids that are at, trickle down effect because the top programs just don't have the room for them to bring them in right now.
Well, that's a good thing for Akron, right? At least for the short term, until they're like, oh, buddy's back. I'm out of here. But I think it's just going to be a fascinating conversation. This is definitely not the last time that we're going to have this conversation. We definitely want to get in, obviously, some football talk. Before we start our next segment, we want to remind you here at Maverick Sports Consulting, we are hosting a free seminar this Thursday night at 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. It's what scouts are seeing on your tape. We will be queuing up Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence, Penn State linebacker Micah Parsons, and Florida tight end Kyle Pitts to let you hear what is happening inside a scout's head when he watches college tape like yours. If you're a player, agent, coach, or fan that would like to learn what scouts see when they are watching film, join our mailing list on Twitter at @Mav_sports to receive the link to the Zoom meeting. Don't forget, it's free. Free seminar this Thursday night at 4:30 p.m. Pacific time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Why pass this up? David?
Yeah, I'm really excited for us this week because it's me and you doing what we do, watching film, breaking players down, showing them what we can do for them. I mean, it's an unmuzzled look into a scouting world where a lot of these kids think they know what's being said about them and how we're breaking positions down, and they truly don't know what we're thinking and what we're asking them to work on and how we're working it through in our brain and how it works with schemes and stuff. Like when we're talking about Friday Night Scout School, how a vertical passing scheme is going to catch one sort of player and receiver and offensive lineman is going to be different for a zone blocking scheme than a power blocking scheme. So yeah, we're going to take some of the top college players, run through them, answer questions. We're there for the players to teach them what we do. Then they can come extend their knowledge, obviously, at Friday Night Scout School, or they can, sign up for one of our video review packages just so we can write a report on them and they can see what we're thinking when we see the report,
And can you imagine not being a part of Friday Night Scout School? Well, this is an extension, a free extension. Make sure to take advantage of this Thursday again, 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Eastern time. Myself and David Turner will be in the film room as always. We want to move over to a quick recap of this past weekend. David, we're going to do it a little different than we usually do. We usually go game by game and just give some general thoughts. We're going to call this segment "What Stuck with You." It could be an NFL game, college game, a statistic, a player, whatever you choose. No, there are no stipulations. There are no rules when we're talking about what stuck with you. So David Turner, asking you to begin. What stuck with you?
What stuck with me was that we're not talking about this Central Florida quarterback. I mean, Dylan Gabriel threw for 601 yards, 5 touchdowns, no turnovers. So far this year, this mighty mouse of a quarterback, this Drew Brees lookalike almost, has thrown for 1,700 yards, 14 touchdowns, and only 2 interceptions. I mean, his completion percentage is nearly 65%. He's a guy that's, again, just really making an impression on me as I watch him. I know he's not the tallest guy. Again, I just compared him to Drew Brees, but neither is Kyler Murray or, some of these other quarterbacks that we have in the NFL these days. So, I think you guys got to start paying attention. I mean, he has enough mobility. He's already rushed for 108 yards or so and another rushing TD this year. So this is a kid who's got good arm strength, really good quickness, agility, and he has good field vision. And, this is a kid that was in high school. He was like 42 yards away from passing for 10,000 yards, and he had 105 touchdowns in high school. So, I mean, this is a kid who knows how to throw the touchdown, has great field vision. He's been showing it. He's only a sophomore. So I don't want to overhype the kid, but if you want to watch somebody fun, go watch the Central Florida game. Watch this young man throw the ball. It might make you think of Drew Brees.
Yeah, and he's got a live arm on him for sure. We're seeing, like David said, Kyler Murray's, the Russell Wilsons. These guys are kind of changing the way that we might evaluate the quarterback position. To move on to what stuck with me, David, I need you to ask me what stuck with me in your Al Davis voice. I need to hear it.
Ryan, this weekend, what stuck with you?
What stuck with me is something that's going to make David Turner feel very old in a split second. I'm talking Joe Horn, Pro Bowl wide receiver Joe Horn from the New Orleans Saints, son, J.C. Horn. Let me give you a quick backstory here. In the summer, I put out an article where I said the South Carolina cornerback, J.C. Horn, could be cornerback 1 in the 2021 NFL draft when all was said and done. I was ridiculed. I was mocked. I was called an idiot. It happens on Twitter all the time, but it really hurt me. It hurt me so much because I had watched so much film on this kid. I'm like, nah, man, I'm telling you, this kid's got it. This kid's got it. Everyone's ranking him as like 100 to 150 ranked player on like the Draft Network, a bunch of different people disrespecting my boy J.C. Horn. Disrespecting. Now I'll give a shout out to Dane Brugler of The Athletic. I think he had him at like number 40 to begin the year, which is like a pretty solid starting spot, So not everybody was down on my boy JC, but I'm telling you, man, he just came off of a game this past weekend against a very good wide receiver in Seth Williams. He was shadowing him all over the field. Ended the game, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, David. 5 pass breakups. In 8 throws officially at J.C. Horn when guarding potential high-round pick Seth Williams. He forced 7 incompletions out of the 8, had 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups, only allowed 1 reception. My dude is 6 foot plus, 200 plus pounds, NFL pedigree, more speed than he's going to get given credit for, best press man technique in the 2021 NFL draft class by a landslide. My guy is super physical. After the game, everyone's like, oh man, he might be a first round pick. Well, if you read Ryan Roberts' article in the summer, you would have known who J.C. Horn was. I got Stephon Gilmore tweeting him out. Obviously, he's a South Carolina guy too, so that's expected. But they're like, come grab my boy. Come grab my boy. Everybody wants to talk about him. He's a riser. He's not a riser for Ryan Roberts because he's exactly where he should be in the first round conversation to start this year.
No, I love it because I know you've been hyping him up since we started, podcast, Friday Night Scout School, everything. You've been talking about this kid. And even like we were doing predictions, I think a few weeks back, and you had South Carolina shutting down somebody, but, you were wrong. I was right.
It was Florida. I was wrong on that one. I admit it.
And I'm just saying my Gators chomped it up. But he's, I watched him in that game because of what you said. He's a very good player. I love his feet for his height. His footwork is really amazing. His length and his ability to keep his hands off the receiver. He's not a grabby guy, So for me, when I watch him, I see the good transition. I see the good upper body balance and core strength that it takes to, not be a grabby guy when you're transitioning and stuff. So he's got that, what do we call it? Quabs in Friday Night Scouts role, the quickness, agility, balance, and strength. So he's got good quabs. So, again, he's a guy that I got excited from that Florida game because that beforehand you had set me up and were telling me about him.
Yeah. And again, 2 interceptions, 5 pass breakups in one game is absolutely insane. One of the pass breakups he had actually led to an interception for his teammate as well. So he was directly responsible for 3 turnovers in that game. Telling you, man, check out my boy number 1 from South Carolina, JC Horn, if you haven't already. Awesome dude too. Did an interview with him in the summer for that article. Awesome guy. Make sure to check that out. That's a couple of what stuck with us this weekend. Are you curious what good interior offensive line play looks like? Do you want to know why centers and guards are so valuable? This week on Friday Night Scout School, we are covering the interior offensive linemen that play the scouting film on X, Y, and Z players. There's X, Y, and Z that we have this weekend. Quentin Nelson, Eric McCoy, and we also are taking a look at David DeCastro coming out of Stanford. So many great football players. If you haven't already, sign up today at NFLDraftBible.com. Would recommend the season pass, but at least come take a look at these interior offensive linemen that we have cooking for you all. Want to get into some games for the weekend. I got some juice tonight, David. I am ready to go here, man, moving into this third segment here. We want to start with so many one-win teams in the NFL right now. It is berserk. I forget the stat that Rick told us earlier, but I'm looking at these.
A third of the league.
Yeah, a third of the league. And one thing that we have been very pretty consistent with over the last, I don't know how many years, parity is usually pretty high with the free agency era. You know, there's not these dynasties that are sticking around like you saw with the Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s, the Dallas Cowboys through the 90s, the 80s, 90s, San Francisco 49ers. Like, it's hard to keep that much talent together. So usually you see there's a lot of middle ground here. You're not seeing a lot of middle ground. You're seeing some really darn good football teams and a lot of one in whatever teams that they are right now, depending on if they've had their bye week so far. So we're talking about the state of these one-win teams. Of those teams, David, who do you think is the most surprising to be on that list right now?
Off this list, I got to say it's the Vikings. I think that. I picked the Vikings to have a good year this year. I liked what they did in the draft. I thought they had a strong team coming back. I really was like, then they traded and got another pass rusher. So I was like, oh, here we go. Vikings are making a run at it. And to see them at 1 win right now, like, that's the most surprising team on this list. I think, for the rest of them, I wasn't surprised with, the Bengals, even though they're competing hard and everything. They're young. They got a young quarterback. They're trial by fire. The Texans, trading away their best player. Already fired their coach. Same with Falcons, already fired their coach and GM. So, it doesn't surprise me to see the Jaguars. The other team that would be surprising is the Chargers, because that's another team that is playing tough. I know they lost Tyrod in an unexpected situation, but those, to me, are the two teams on this list that stick out about, like, oh, I thought they would be better than 1 win by this point in the season.
Yeah, and you took my one there. I was going to say it's definitely the Los Angeles Chargers for me. I keep wanting to say San Diego. It's still very weird to hear.
San Diego.
Yeah, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Washington football team, a lot of different names that we have to familiarize ourselves with. I think the Chargers would be my team, though. I think that there's so many good pieces. Now, I know Derwin James got hurt before the year with their outstanding safety. I know Austin Eckler's been dealing with some injury. Keenan Allen now. I know they're playing a rookie quarterback, and the offensive line's not great, but I'm looking at that team before the season. I'm like, I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, defensively, you got Joey Bosa, you got Melvin Ingram, you got Derwin James before he got hurt, right? You got Nasir Adderley is a guy that I really like a ton. There's so much talent on that team. Obviously, injuries has been a big thing across the league. It's hit the Chargers. And I like your mention of Minnesota Vikings. Did another team that I was a little middling on, I thought they would be in contention for a playoff spot. Like, I thought they would be in that conversation. I wasn't sold on them being like a real contender because they did lose, Stephon Diggs, and there's some very questionable interior offensive line play right now for this team. But man, if you would have told me that Mike Zimmer's Minnesota Vikings would be sitting at 1 win going into what are we on, week 7, 6, whatever it is.
Week 7. This is coming up on 7.
Right, yeah. So we're going into week 7, and Mike Zimmer's Minnesota team is sitting with 1 win. I would have called you a liar because if anybody's ever talked to me, I'm a huge Mike Zimmer fan. Going back to his days with the Dallas Cowboys as the defensive coordinator, Cincinnati Bengals as the defensive coordinator, I think he's an excellent football coach. And I'm very surprised. I've never been a Kirk Cousins guy, but I thought that they would have enough. Dalvin Cook obviously dealing with some injuries as well. But, man, I cannot believe a couple of these teams are one win right now. Asking you, though, David, on this, of that list that we just talked about a little bit, is there any team that you think that could rebound? It's obviously odds are stacked against them, but is there a team, in your opinion, that might be able to maybe make some type of rise and be in contention for the playoffs when everything's said and done?
Well, I think any team in the NFC East is in contention for the division title still,
My
seeing that
God.
the leader of the division is only the 2-win Dallas Cowboys, who got dismantled the other night, last night. So, it's something that again, being a Giants guy, coming up in that division, to see that division be like it is. I mean, the whole division only has 5 wins out of, what is it? She's all these games that have been played. I mean,
It's gross.
23 or 24 games played, and they only have 5 wins. So, as a division, I can't believe that they're down so far. And going into the season, again, you had, Dak, you have Carson Wentz, you have Daniel Jones, you have Haskins. You think that, okay, they got 4 quarterbacks in that division, that you got a couple young kids coming up, and maybe this will be a year they take a stride forward. But no, it's just the bottom, and the wheels are falling off this whole division. So, but I'll say this, if I'm a betting guy, I'd bet one of these 1-win teams in this division to make the playoffs over any other division, just because of who they're playing. But again, if I really, the team I like that I would say could rise off the bottom, they're just in the wrong division. It really is the Bengals. Like, when I watch the Bengals play, Joe Burrow is making me a huge fan of him. I think he's playing really well. The defense is riddled with injuries, but when they are healthy, they are being really stout. They are playing really well. They're just in the wrong division. They have to contend with the Steelers and the Ravens, and this new era Browns team. So I like them. They might win some non-division games as they go through the rest of the season. And I think next year, though, that's a team that's going to be interesting to watch rebound.
The Browns are frauds, man. What they got my hopes up, and then they got dismantled. I know the Steelers are a good team. I get it, but the Browns.
I was going to say they got dismantled by one of the best teams in football right now. One of the only undefeated teams.
Yeah, but in that stacked division, right? If the Browns are a serious playoff contender, you got to beat. They lost 38-7, I think, in their first matchup against Baltimore. They got destroyed by I think the same exact score against the Steelers. If they're an actual serious contender, you got to win a couple games in that division, other than the Cincinnati Bengals. So,
don't get me wrong, I'm with you. I don't think the Browns are for real. I think I'm with you. I think that they're pretenders too. But I'm just saying, can't crush them for getting crushed by the 5-0 Steelers that have been running through a lot of teams right now. So that's all.
David, this is my podcast. I can crush whoever I feel like on this. Just kidding. So that's the dumpster of the NFL right now, for lack of a better term. We got the Philadelphia Eagles, New York Giants, Washington football team, Minnesota Vikings, Falcons, Bengals, Texans, Jaguars, Chargers, and don't forget the only 0-6 team in the NFL, the New York Jets. Man, we can spend a whole podcast on the Jets. They are a laughing stock. They're one of the worst teams I've ever seen, David. I'm trying to remember that Detroit Lions team that went 0-16 a few years ago with Orlovsky at quarterback. That team was awful, but I think that team might be better than this Jets team. This Jets team is bad.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they have plenty of cap room now, getting rid of Bell and stuff for next year, so that could look like a smart move if they do the right thing with it. And again, I mean, just keeping this coach around. I saw some former personnel director or GM say it would be travesty to fire Gase at this point in the season, and he should just let him have it. I'm like, get the heck out of here. I'm like, you know what? This guy's doing nothing there but collecting a check and ruining the possibility of winning. Now, I'm not a big, Greg Williams fan either, so turning the team over to him wouldn't be my cup of tea, even though that's what he wants. I mean, Greg Williams, that's all he ever wants. But for me, I think there's some other guys in the building. You just give a young coach a chance to run like I said, we're in week 7. So after this weekend, fire him, give this young coach nine games to figure it out and do some things. And then, get either Greg Roman or, Eric Bieniemy or, Don Martindale. I mean, shoot, a lot of guys that are out there deserve a head coaching job. I mean, I tweeted a whole list of them the other day for the Falcons and the Texans. So you can go to my Twitter at Mavs Sports, at Mav_sports, and check out the list I've tweeted out for both GMs and for coaches. But I mean, and again, I hope they keep the GM. The Jets, I do. I like Joe. I've said it many times. I like Joe. I think he'll be a really, really good GM. Came out of that Baltimore Ravens system, the Ozzie Newsome, Eric DaCosta style managers. And I think, he'll have the right attitude to just let him name his own coach.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I did see somebody that had like kind of another mindset that was like, why don't you just keep Adam Gase so that you make sure that you can get Trevor Lawrence? No cheap wins down the stretch. I'm like, all right, I get what you're saying. I don't necessarily agree with it, and that's
again, I'm not one to give up on Sam Darnold. I mean,
I like Darnold too, man. I really do. I'm hoping for the best for Sam Darnold. I think a change of scenery might just be best for him, though. Honestly.
I just get rid of the cancer. Cut the cancer out. Cut it out. Yeah, let the team cut the cancer out and use some chemo this year and get healed up the rest of the year. Just get him out of the building, and then you'll see what Sam Darnold really can do. Tannehill got away from him, and he's a good quarterback now.
No, trust me. I think Darnold can still be a good NFL quarterback. Absolutely, dude. He was actually my top-rated quarterback in that draft cycle, the Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Like, I really liked Sam Darnold a bunch. It's just like, at this point, though, whether Gase is the coach or not for the rest of the year, they're probably going to be in contention for that first overall pick. And here's the dilemma, David. I agree with you. I would like them to just stick with Darnold and see what we got there. But if you have the first overall pick, is Sam Darnold going to stop you from pulling the trigger on Trevor Lawrence? Like, is it going to stop you?
Let me tell you the Jamarcus Russell story. I don't know if I've told this on the air. We had the first pick overall in Oakland, right? We're sitting there with the first pick overall. Mr. Davis is asking the room, everybody, what they want to do. Adrian Peterson is coming out that year, okay? And so is Megatron. Now, people in the room wanted Megatron. Some people wanted other players. We had a deal on the table. Who's the head or the GM over at Baltimore at the time was
Ozzie?
No. It was the guy who just was running the Senior Bowl. Now he's up at the Jets with Joe. It'll come to me. But anyway, this guy, he's from Mobile. He runs camps down there. He's known Jamarcus since he was 15 years old. And so he was just like, I want to trade up from 3 to 2 or 3 to 1. And we were going to get his first round pick that year, the first round pick the next year, the second and third round picks, the second pick this year and the second pick next year. So we already had two third round picks. So Mr. Davis came to me and asked me my opinion. I said, well, I take the deal. And he's all, well, tell me why. I was like, at 3, you take Adrian Peterson. At the time, we already had Ronald Curry, who was healthy, Jerry Porter, and Randy Moss was still on the team. I was like, and then in the second round, because Lane was the new coach, I was like, well, Lane's more of a West Coast guy, not what Mr. Davis wanted to hear, but he is more of a West Coast guy. So I was just like, we can get the kid out of Stanford, Edwards, in this first pick in the second round. And then with their pick in the second round, we can get the tight end out of Arizona State, who we did wind up taking in the second round, Zach Miller. And then in the third, and then we still have 3 receivers, a young running back, young quarterback, young tight end, and we haven't touched the offensive line or the pass rush, and we have 2 third-round picks. So it's like you could touch the offensive line and the pass rush in the third round, and with those picks, you can put a team together versus just have a certain player. Yeah, if you don't have a quarterback, you want a quarterback. Like, I get that. But when you have Sam Darnold, and then the value in that pick becomes so big because everybody is thirsting over Trevor Lawrence or, Fields or whoever it winds up being, that number 1 pick consensus, when they're thirsting over that number 1 pick, you can trade back and pick up like 4 or 5 picks over a couple of years because the Jets aren't one player away.
They're not. I agree.
So it's like if I just trade back and I have a good quarterback, I mean, he is a good quarterback. When I was doing the draft cycle, he was my second. He wasn't my first quarterback. He was my second that year. But I was just like, this is a good quarterback. You put some guys around him, he's going to look even better. You get the coach out of the building, he's going to look fantastic. So it's like, let's put some O-line, put a run game together. Let's protect this kid, give him some weapons on the outside, put a defense that can give him the ball on short fields. Like, let's do some things. It's not about having a Pro Bowl quarterback. It's about winning championships. And if you're going to do that, you got to have a team. That's the best thing New England ever did. They had a team. They took a quarterback in the 6th round, put teams around him. Later in his career, they didn't have a great team around him. But pretty much earlier in his career, he had pretty good teams around him.
He did, absolutely. Were you a Josh Rosen guy? I know we're taking way too much time on this segment.
I like Josh Rosen. I thought Josh Rosen he had some of the best fundamentals I had seen out of a college quarterback in years. His balance with his footwork, obviously from his years of being on the tennis circuit as a young man, his arm strength, his ability to read the defense, everything like that I thought was really good in college at UCLA. I really enjoyed him. I didn't enjoy some of the off-field stories and the smugness that when he answered questions, the lack of maturity, and I was worried about that. But I mean, when Aaron Rodgers came in the league too, he wasn't that mature either. So, I think I said this, I think earlier in one of the podcasts, what he did by going to Tampa Bay and going on the practice squad showed me a lot of maturity, because that's the staff that drafted him. He said, I'll come down here. I'll take my lumps. I'll learn from Tom Brady, one of the best, and take it to the next level. And, I think by him doing that showed me maturity. But Josh Rosen, with his balance and his footwork and his arm strength and that stuff, my top quarterback coming out was, Allen. He was a guy in my area. I knew him really well. And I thought Dorsey and what Dorsey liked at, as in a quarterback, I really thought Josh was going to be his guy, number one over pick. When he picked Baker, I was like, what the? I was shocked.
David, you need to write a book one day, Scouting Tales by David Turner. I can see it, man.
I'm already writing 3 books. Maybe that'll be the 4th one.
You definitely well, put it on the list. We took up a lot of time on that segment, so we want to move into some pick'ems for this week. We're going to be a little more brief because we definitely want to get to our mailbag for this week. Let's start college football Saturdays. Every time I talk to David on a Saturday morning, I'm like, sacred, Robert's household. He gets the picture at this point. We're going to go Florida State, Louisville, Florida, fresh off a upset of North Carolina, number 5 North Carolina at the time. Louisville, tough 12-7 loss to Notre Dame. They are favored by 5 points. The over-under set at 59.5. David, Florida State having a little bit of a resurgence here, or are you going with the Louisville Cardinals in this one?
No, I was shocked that my Tar Heels got upset last week. I mean, just shocked. If anybody has heard me this year, I love them Tar Heels. And when I was watching that game last week, I could not believe, and even late in the game, the quarterback for UNC came back and, put him back in the game. He had, really good game at the end, but I was really surprised. I think Florida State just caught the UNC team slipping, and they weren't taking them serious. And you are a Louisville guy. You love the Louisville. You even picked them against.
Not a Louisville guy.
You picked them against my U the other day. You picked them against you. I did. But no, I think Louisville does take this one. I think Florida State did get lucky. I don't see them winning 2 in a row. And again, there's just too much going wrong in Florida State, which is sad because I love the Seminoles. I grew up watching Notre Dame and Seminole games, which were some of the best, games to watch, and Miami and Seminole games were great. So, I mean, I always loved when I was at the Raiders and different places drafting Florida State guys because they were tough. I mean, Florida State guys, you could punch in the face and they would just laugh at you, even as they're spitting a tooth out. I mean, they were just tough, and they just don't have that anymore. They're not the Marvin Jones, Seminoles, and they weren't, it's not, you're just not going to see them anymore like that. But they had some great defensive backs coming out of there. Some fantastic offensive linemen. Like Florida State was loaded for years and years, and now they're just not. And it's sad because as you know, when we were talking to Mike earlier, the richness and tradition of Notre Dame football is the reason why people go to that school, right? Not just the education. Same here. Florida State used to be one of those places where you just wanted to play for Bobby Bowden and play for the Seminoles and just be down there in that culture. And now it's not that way anymore. It's sad.
It is absolutely sad. I agree. I remember those, I felt like I was spoiled a little bit right there, right? Because I remember, Penn State was really up at the time with Joe Pa, and they had Bobby Bowden. There were so many great coaches at that point. Obviously, we still have guys like Nick Saban now, but it was just something about those guys, man. And Florida State, college football is better when Florida State is good. They're not going to be good this weekend, though. Louisville is finally going to get that big victory I've been calling for a few weeks. Played a tough game against Notre Dame, to be honest, man. Louisville's defense is not good, but they showed up in South Bend, and they played a really good football game. I still like the offensive pieces that Louisville has. I think that they have done well on offense aside from the Notre Dame game over this season. It's just been the defense that's been the problem. If they can get more of a all-around effort this time, I think they outlast the Seminoles, who are going to be maybe feeling themselves a little bit too much after the big victory against North Carolina. So give me Louisville to cover the 5. Over under.
I'm going under. I'm going to call it. I'm going under.
I think I'm going under too. This seems like a 30 to 23 game or something like that. So I'll go a little under on that one. Next game, we want to talk about the return of the Big Ten. Nebraska taking on Ohio State. Ohio State. You want to talk about not your father's Cornhuskers, right? There's no Turner Gill in this game because Nebraska is an underdog here against Ohio State. The Ohio State, 26 points, over under set at 66.5. First game, David, for the Ohio State Buckeyes and Nebraska in the return the Big Ten. I'm picking Nebraska to cover, not to win. Nebraska loses by 3 scores, maybe 20, 21 points. They cover that 26. Give me the over. I think Nebraska with Scott Frost in year 3 is going to start turning it around offensively a bit. I think they're going to be able to score a little bit against Ohio State. Ohio State lost a lot of defensive juggernauts. I know that they recruit to the highest degree, but give me Nebraska to cover against Ohio State, but Ohio State to pull out the victory.
What's in your cup tonight? Can I have some?
I don't know, man. I'm just not, it's the first game. I think there's going to be some.
Scott Frost ran his mouth on the Big Ten that he was going to go somewhere else and find games. And they said, oh, yeah? How about opening up against a pissed off Ohio State team?
Why are they pissed off?
Fields is pissed off because he was like, hey, I might not get a chance, and Trevor Lawrence is going to run away with that first pick overall, and now I got something to prove. And a lot of these Ohio State people, or a lot of football fans, have been sitting watching the SEC get all the press, get all the hype. This is Ohio State. This is the Ohio. So this is going to be a statement game. They're going to go and beat down Nebraska. And this is going to be Scott Frost having to, in the conference after, press conference, eating some words that he put out there. And it's just going to be like, all right, Scott, here you go. You wanted to go somewhere else? Well, why don't you beat Ohio State? The division, the conference is like, here, you're opening up against Ohio State. And I think this Ohio State team has been watching Clemson get the press, get Alabama, all these other teams get the press, and they want to make a statement. This is going to be like a 56-10 game. This is going to be, I don't know if it's over, but it's going to be an ass whooping.
Well, you're saying it's going to be the under if it's 56-10, right? By my quick math skills, that's 66, below the 66.5. David's taking it right to the wire there. Give me Scott Frost to cover. Ohio State takes the victory. Michigan, Minnesota. Michigan 3.5-point favorites. The over-under set on 54.5. David, I have a very, very strong feeling in this game, but I want to hear you first on this one. What do you think about these Gophers, the PJ Fleck rowing the boat to take on the University of Michigan?
I like PJ Fleck. I like him a lot. I don't know if he's got the horses in the barn, to win this one, but I like PJ Fleck. I think he coaches his teams up really well. They're always prepared. They would know that an onside kick doesn't have to go 10 yards before the receiving team can touch it and recover it. It's not going to be one of those kind of things. I really like what he does there in Minnesota. I'm going to pick Michigan, and I'm going to pick them to cover and all that. And I'm going to go with the over on points. And I'm going to say I could be wrong. I'm not. This isn't a firm Michigan pick because Fleck is such a good coach, but I just feel Michigan's going to outlast them and win by that 3.5, 4-point margin.
Not so fast, my friend. Minnesota takes this one. PJ Fleck, I'm rowing the boat, man. After that 4-8 Notre Dame year, where a lot of rumors were about, is Brian Kelly going to be on the way out? PJ Fleck was my guy if that job became open, because that was the year that he left Western Michigan and made the decision, obviously, to go to the University of Minnesota. Really good coach. I think he not only is he in line for an even bigger head coaching job, I think he might be an NFL guy eventually. I am a very big supporter of PJ Fleck.
Watch out. He might be in Atlanta next year. He could be
Hey, and that would be a great hire. I fully endorse PJ Fleck, college, NFL, any professional league. I don't care. PJ Fleck's my guy. Takes down University of Michigan, win the game outright. I'm going over as well. We're looking for an offensive explosion, putting up 40 points on these Wolverines. Calling it right now. There's my pick of the week. And also I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I hate Michigan.
Yeah,
so
I was just gonna say your Notre Dame showing.
That's fine. My tattoo is showing, I think. So yes, my Notre Dame is showing.
Moving to the NFL. You're letting your Notre Dame fanhood show.
Moving to the NFL games. Tampa Bay 3-point favorites over David's Las Vegas Raiders. Over under 53.5. David, Tampa Bay off of a nice victory, obviously, this past weekend. A game that I picked, by the way. You said Tampa Bay's not going to take down Green Bay. I picked them against Green Bay. And you were oh, you're crazy. You're crazy. Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers. All right. Tampa Bay only 3-point favorites, though, over the Raiders. Last time we saw the Raiders, they were upsetting the Kansas City Chiefs for the Chiefs' only loss of the season. What are your thoughts on this game, David? 53.5 also over under.
I'm going to say this because I'm a big fan of this guy. All right? I'm a big fan of this guy. I've met this man before. He's an incredible human being. He's a wonderful father. But more than anything, he's a man after my own heart. Because he runs a 4-3 and he goes after the pass rush and he's all about getting quarterbacks on their back. Todd Bowles is dialing up the pressure the last few weeks. He's a guy that is bringing energy into that locker room. He has relentlessly pounded the quarterbacks over the last few weeks. I thought that Green Bay line was going to not stand up to that pressure. They crumbled, and here we go again. Can the Vegas Raiders hold up to this pressure that Todd Bowles is bringing? And his boys are feeling him. I mean, they're standing up. Their hands are in the dirt. They're coming off the ball. You don't know which way they're coming from. He's got talent. It was like when Todd Bowles was the DC out here in Arizona, he had talent and he knew what to do with it. He goes over there to the Jets. They have no talent. So they like, oh, you're a terrible coach. Well, now he's back in Tampa, or he's down in Tampa, and he's got talent, and he knows what to do with it. I mean, you got to load up the cupboard for some of these chefs to bake it. You know what I mean? And in New York, he didn't have the cats to go get them. But here in Tampa, he's dialed it up, and he's going and getting them. And I love watching his defense right now. It's reminding me of them old school Tampa 2, go get them style, rough them up in the trenches type guys. So, I mean, again, I like what the Raiders are doing. I think this is going to be a clash. This is going to be a very big clash this week. This is a must-see game. You got to tune in and watch this. Have a couple pops. Enjoy it, This is what I'm going to be watching. Hit me during the game on Twitter because I'm going to be watching this one. It's definitely one I'm going to be all over. So, for me, I'm going to pick the Tampa Buccaneers with the points to win the game, and I'm going to go with the over.
Interesting. So I will say I like a lot of what Tampa Bay's defense is doing. Absolutely. Devin White, I was a huge Devin White guy coming out of LSU. Loved Devin White. He's playing some nice ball. Levante David. Tampa Bay's got it rolling. Tom Brady is looking really good. Kind of proving some doubters wrong that thought that he couldn't last outside of that New England system, right? We're kind of seeing that he's doing a pretty good job. So, but I am going to pick here, David. Follow me on this one. Ready? So 3-point Tampa Bay favorite. I'm going to pick the Raiders to cover but lose. This is going to be the game of the week. This is going to be a 28-22 last touchdown victory for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to not cover, but to win over the Las Vegas Raiders. And I'm picking the under on this game. Picking the under.
Oh, this will be one for us to come back and see who wins on this one on Sunday afternoon.
Especially because I just lied. I'm actually picking the over because my math was awful on that. So it's the over, but I'm picking the Raiders to cover on it. I'm picking the Raiders to cover and lose. All right. Sorry. I'm only a math teacher. No big deal. Pittsburgh Steelers.
Show your work. You got to show your work.
I have to show my work. Pittsburgh Steelers. Very off to a great start here. 1.5-point favorites against the Tennessee Titans. We got two undefeateds here. We are only going to have one undefeated when the game is over. I guess unless there's a tie. Does that count as being defeated? I don't know. 52.5 over under. I'll tell you this, David. I don't know why Pittsburgh's favored in this game. I'm taking Tennessee. The Tennessee Titans are for real. I'm telling you right now. Their defense is very talented, and they aren't even playing well yet. When this Tennessee Titans defense starts playing well, and it's going to happen at some point, Derrick Henry, Ryan Tannehill is playing great football. I think that team is really, really good. Big fan of Mike Vrabel as a head coach. I think I love a lot of what Tennessee's got going on. And I'm going to pick them to defeat the Pittsburgh Steelers, win the game, maybe under on the over and under, though. I might take the under on the 52.5.
We got two undefeated teams lining it up and going to hammer at each other. This is going to be another great game. This weekend's got some great matchups. I'm just loving this weekend of football, from college football to pro football. The matchups are amazing this weekend. But those Pittsburgh Steelers defense now, come on. I know you love this Titans run game. You love what they're doing. And I like what they're doing a lot. But I'm going to tell you, this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is playing unreal football right now. I mean, if you look at their points given up, they are not giving up many points. I mean, they just held Cleveland to 7 points. The week before they only gave up 29 to Philly. Weekend before that, they gave 20 up to San Francisco. Weekend before that, they gave up 21 to Houston. So you're looking at a team that's only giving up 3 scores really on average. When you average it all out, 20, 21 points, and their offense is putting up 35 points. So, I think this is going to be a great battle. Like you, I think it's going to be a 1-possession, 1-score style game. I think they're going to go back and forth like a heavyweight battle should be. But at the end of the day, I got Pittsburgh winning, and I'm going to take the under because I don't know if these two defenses are going to give up many points.
So I don't agree with you.
I know you don't, but that's okay.
Yep. We just don't agree with you on that one. We see that one completely different. Last game we went to touch on the NFL. Sorry, I was thinking of like a clever rebuttal, and I'm just like, I just don't agree.
I just don't agree.
Seattle Seahawks, Arizona Cardinals. Last game we want to touch on real quick. Over under set of 55. I could not find a line on this game. So David, if you
Arizona plus 3.5.
Arizona's favor. Oh no, Arizona. Oh, so Seattle is the favorite. 3.5 points. Then got it. Well, I'm taking Seattle still. Doesn't matter. I thought I was about to get an easy pick. I'm like, oh, no line on this game? Give me the Seahawks. But I'm still going to take Seattle. I'm not a big believer in Arizona. I know they just had a nice win against the really bad Dallas Cowboys team. Like, I get there's a lot of things to be excited about. Kyler Murray, Kenyon Drake started getting it going a little bit. Christian Kirk. There's some pieces. to be really excited about offensively for that Arizona Cardinals team, I think Seattle's just I think they're just better. They're just a better football team, in my opinion. I'm going to take Russell Wilson in this matchup. The over-under, this one's messing with me because, like, my first thought was over 55. I'll go over, but I'm still going to take the Seattle Seahawks to cover.
Yeah, I love Seattle. They're my pick for the Super Bowl, and I'm with them, and I think that Russell's going to be the MVP this year. So Rick's all over Kyle Murray and this, and so him and I are probably going to put a bet on it tomorrow. But this is the thing. I am worried about the Seahawks pass rush. They are not really generating a lot of pass rush. They're little depleted and injury wise this week. So for me, I think if they get defeated, if they get beat, this is the week to do it because Kyler is playing really well. They have a great passing game. He's able to elude and create away from the pocket, which is going to be a problem for Seattle just because their pass rush isn't. I don't feel they're going to be able to contain him. So he'll get outside the pocket and be able to sling it, and he's got plenty of arm strength to stretch the field with it. So with Hopkins and Isabella and all them running around, that have vertical speed, I think this is going to be a really hard game fought both ways. I think Russell finds a way to win it. I think Seattle does win it. I think it might be a last-second field goal, though. So I'm going to do Arizona to cover, and I'm going to go with the over.
I liked how you said Isabella. That was really romantic. I like that.
Isabella.
Andy Isabella on pretty good. We're on a similar wavelength with that game, I think. Before we get into our mailbag section of tonight, we appreciate you tuning in to Mavs Sports Take tonight. Are you looking for a way to promote your company? If you would like to learn more about partnering with Mavs Sports Take, contact us at mavericksportsconsulting.com. We've opened up our partnership for you to take advantage of. Mavs Sports Take is reaching nearly 500 listeners each episode. Drop us an email at mavericksportsconsulting.com, and we will work to tailor a custom partnership package just for you. Mailbag, David's favorite time of the week. We have, of course, as always, some great questions. Shout out to you all for giving us some questions on our radar to talk about this week. Let's start. Oh man, we have so many. We have a couple good ones. I don't think we'll be able to get to them all, but we definitely want to get to a couple here at least. Desperate times around the Philadelphia Eagles, David. Let's go to Jack here. Jack, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, and with all respect to you, because I do not want to butcher it. So Jack asks, what is Zach Ertz's trade value? So Zach Ertz is now out 3 to 4 weeks. There's been a lot of talk about trading him before the deadline because his contract is set to run out after this year, to expire. And there's been a lot of talk about trading him before the deadline with Dallas Goedert in place as their starting tight end. So he wants to know, if you trade Zach Ertz, obviously now dealing with his injury, what type of value, what type of assets could you potentially get, in your opinion, David, for a guy like Zach Ertz, who's been a very good tight end, not having a great year, and he's now dealing with a little bit of an injury here?
Yeah, it all depends on the injury. Is he going to pass the physical? If he, is it something he's going to be able to come 100% back from, or is he going to be a nagging injury? I mean, you can't overinvest in even, when you're in the middle of a season, you can't overinvest in players, because there's not enough room on your salary cap. Most of your money's already spent, and B, you can't get rid of young players and draft picks for a guy that, again, next year you don't have under a contract. And is a tight end really going to push you over the hump to make you the Super Bowl winning champion, right? It's not like you're going to get an all-star running back or a receiver that can come in and learn it and develop. Tight end's a different position because you have to really be involved in the running game, blocking, pass blocking, on top of route. It's hard. It's a position I wouldn't overinvest in right now. So for me, giving a conditional pickup somewhere in the back end of the draft is what I would offer. If they wanted to do it, they could do it. If not, I probably wouldn't offer more than that, just because of the position he plays and he's injured.
Yeah, and
there's no contract.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. So the team that trades for him also has to figure out what, if he's a long-term asset to them. So they have to start thinking about contract situations. Are they going to extend him after they sign him? Like, what are the timetable on that? For me, like, I keep hearing Philly sports talk, right? Because I'm right here in South Jersey. Everybody's talking about, what you get for Zach Ertz. And everybody I listen to is like, oh, you could probably get a third-round pick for him. I'm just like, dude, from who? Like, have you seen Zach Ertz play this year? He's about to be 30 years old at a position, like you said, David, that probably shouldn't be that highly valued, right? Like, obviously, it's nice to have that type of asset. But Zach Ertz is a guy that has never won with athleticism. He's starting to slow down even more. He doesn't block a lick, so he's not an asset to you in the run game at all. He's out 3 to 4 weeks with an injury. You have to pay him potentially now going towards the offseason. Like, what am I talking about with a third-round pick? I think conditional, I think, is a good way to go. That's probably what I would offer as well. I mean, I'd be hard-pressed if it's not conditional to offer more than like a fifth for him. Like, I just – like, what is it?
Again, you got a 30-year-old guy coming off of an injury who doesn't block. And again, he doesn't have a contract next year, so he's going to be looking to get paid because he's up there, and you don't know what you're going to get. And so, I mean, again, if you're a team that's getting ready to run for the championship, you think about it, but also you can't give up more because you're not gaining. You're not gaining security with a second year on the contract. You're not gaining a healthy player. You're not gaining a young player. There's, you can't be put over the coals and taken advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jack threw in a couple other guys to touch on briefly. Fletcher Cox, Derek Barnett. Hey, pass rush is always a big element here, right? So Derek Barnett, I think there'll be some takers. I'm not sure how high of a trade value would be. I would say if I was a really good football team that just needed a little more interior pressure, like that was what I needed. Fletcher Cox is still a good football player. We want to talk about a third-round pick that we just talked about with Zach Ertz a little bit. Hey, if I'm a team that's in contention, I just need a little more juice up front in the middle of my defense. I might throw a third-rounder in for Fletcher Cox. I think that's a potential good landing spot and good value for the type of player that Fletcher Cox is still.
No, I agree with you there. And for me, what I'm looking at, what we just talked about was Seattle, right? I mean, you can take Fletcher Cox and add him to the Seahawk roster, and now you got some interior pass rush. Might not be the edge guys, but you put them in there with Reed and Ford in a rotation. I mean, that would be really a powerful front seven or front three to rotate in the interior. And even, like you were talking, I mean, either one of those pass rushers, Seattle would probably be interested in. And if they had a third rounder or a fourth rounder that they'd be willing to part with, it would help them out a great deal to get more pass rush in that division, and helping get rush up the middle is something I'm always about. So, I think putting Cox in there with a fourth rounder, if you can do that, would make sense. Bennett, I might even do. See, because I'm Seattle, I need pass rush off the edge. So Bennett, I might give the third round for, just because I need more pass rush off the edge than, more Cox I can maybe give a fourth up for. And if they'll take a third and a fourth and then trade me both those players, I'll do both trades right now if I'm Seattle, to get that front seven situated before the stretch run here, Oh,
absolutely. Absolutely. We only have time for a couple more here. We're running a little over on time. We had a great conversation, of course, with Mike Singer from Blue and Gold Illustrated. It was an awesome conversation. If you miss it in the beginning here, I would definitely recommend it. Talking some college football, talking some NFL. Moving over to Jake, NFL Draft on Twitter. That's Jake that with us, David, in Friday Night Scout School every week. Awesome guy. He wants to know, who are you looking forward to watching most in the Big Ten this coming weekend? So I'll start off on this and say, if we're just talking individual players, obviously Justin Fields is playing. There's a lot of guys. I'm looking forward to watching Jason Oweh, the defensive end from Penn State. I'm looking forward to watching Rondale Moore from Purdue. If we're talking about games, though, I'm calling a couple upsets this week, David, in the Big Ten, man. I'm taking the James Kirkland Illinois team to defeat the Wisconsin Badgers in the first week. I'm a little down on this Wisconsin team, especially replacing Jonathan Taylor. Offensive line's not as strong. Like, it's got some guys coming back, but it's not as strong as usual. I'm a little lower on this Wisconsin team, man. So I'm going to take Illinois in the upset there. And ready for this one, David? This is a big, big statement here. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Rutgers football team, which has been in shambles over the last few years. Greg Schiano coming in. They're going to catch Michigan State in the middle of what is a awful rebuild. They are not a good football team coming back. They are lost a lot of defensive talent from last year, breaking in a new quarterback. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights upset the Michigan State Spartans this week, first week of Big Ten action. I can't wait for it. Greg Schiano hopefully going to get that turned around a little bit because, at one point, that was a very proud program for a couple of years there with Kenny Britt and all those dudes there. Eric LeGrand right after that. Tim Foster was the defensive tackle. You had the Harmon at safety. You had the McCourty brothers back there. So Rutgers was up for a little bit there. After Coach Schiano left, though, obviously to take the Tampa Bay job, it went downhill pretty quick. Coach Ash was not able to get that team turned around. Obviously now in the Big Ten Conference, the best of college football. So I'm hoping Greg Schiano gets a little bit of a turnaround here pretty quick. David, any teams or games or players that maybe you are looking forward to seeing this weekend for the Big Ten?
Well, like I said, I want to see an Ohio State team come out and, just thump Nebraska. But a player that I'm interested in on that team is Wyatt Davis, the offensive line for Ohio State.
Monster.
I want to see him. I really want to see how he looks. He's a junior offensive lineman. He's about 6'4", 315. I think he could be a guy that comes out and makes a really good impression over this season and can be a pretty good draft pick for somebody. And then also, Penn State's tight end, Pat Freiermuth. I was going to butcher that. I want to watch him this weekend. These are some guys that people aren't talking about. They're not the most popular people. Like, you can talk about Fields and a lot of other people. But these are some unsung heroes that as a scout, you kind of like their game. You want to see what they're about and you want to see what they can do. So those are a couple guys that I'm looking forward to watching this weekend and seeing what they can do now that they're back on the field and playing ball. So yeah.
No, I love the list. And Pat Freiermuth, man, that's tight end one right there. I'm a big fan. I got him over Pitts, David. I know you're going to call me crazy on that one, but
no, because I saw him last year and I like him. This year, Pitts has just been very exciting so far this year. So that's why I want to see this kid because I think that he's up there with Pitts in this conversation for sure.
I have to answer my guy, draft guy Jimmy, on Twitter real quick. Top 5 cornerbacks. So, Jimmy, I haven't updated boards. I haven't watched enough film on guys so far in 2020 to have a change in opinion. So I'll say going out of the summer, my 5 guys were – I already went on a rant about J.C. Horn being number 1, right? So I have J.C. Horn, South Carolina cornerback, number 1. I had Mr. Patrick Surtain Jr., number 2, on the list, cornerback from Alabama, really talented player. Sean Wade from Ohio State was number 3 for me. I had 4, a little surprise one that some people are kind of turning around on a little bit now too, is Eric Stokes, cornerback out of the University of Georgia. And then Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech, the early declaree who opted out of the season. So those are the 5 guys that I was most interested in that I thought put on the best film, at least from 2019. Last question of the night. Yes.
No, go ahead.
Oh, last question of the night at all22_addict at Zach. Yes. What teams should look into a trade for Matt Ryan and/or Julio Jones, and what type of trade package should the Falcons be looking for? So we talked about trade packages for Zach Ertz a little bit, Fletcher Cox potentially. David, let's start off here. What do you think that the Falcons could get right now if they decide to get rid of Matt Ryan? What type of compensation do you think they could receive for him? First round? Second round?
I don't think Matt Ryan would command a first-round pick. I would borderline say second-round pick if it was a low second-round pick, just because Matty Ice is not the favorite of a lot of people around the league. A lot of people don't like his game. They don't like what he can do. again, the San Francisco 49ers team might enjoy that might enjoy this guy coming and joining up with Kyle Shanahan and having that, but they already have Jimmy G under contract for like 3 more years. So, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And, you got to say, well, look at the 1-win teams, right? One of them might like to get Matty Ice, but you would wait till the off season to do it. I don't think you'd bring him in right now. And obviously, I don't think the Falcons without a GM is going to make a big decision like trading the starting quarterback right now. So it's going to be like, who gets the job? Do they want to keep him, not keep him? What's the trade? And I know the question is the trade value. It's, for me, I think Matty Ice is probably a late second round, early third round pick right now. That's what I see for him. If they're trading Julio Jones, was that the other part of that question?
Yeah, the other part was, what would you get for Julio right now?
You would get a first round pick right now.
Easy money?
Easy money. I mean, he's got immense talent still. I know he's got a little injuries that here and there, but the guy, when he's on the field, he is an immense talent. So he's a guy that, again, if you're on a playoff run, you need some juice for your offense. You can bring this guy in. It's only week 7. You got 9 weeks to get him straight before you even go to the playoffs. I mean, if you're willing to deal Julio Jones right now, I think someone would definitely part with a first round pick for him.
I don't know why the team that popped in my head for Julio, and I agree, you could probably get a first for him. I think that is a reasonable valuation for him. Green Bay Packers, they lack a wide receiver depth outside of Devontae Adams. Could you imagine putting Julio Jones in that X position and then using Devontae Adams as that Z receiver, move him over all the place, play him in some slot? Like we talked about, I remember in our draft show, David, like when we were live, we talked about like, what is Green Bay doing at this wide receiver position? What are they doing? Man, if you could just all right, first round pick to get Aaron Rodgers, Julio Jones, and Devontae Adams this year with Aaron Jones in the backfield, that is a potentially special that's a special skill position group for Green Bay Packers. That was just the name that popped in my head, Green Bay Packers. I like the San Francisco 49ers mention for Matt Ryan. I think that he fits what San Francisco wants to do so well. I think that he really does. Second round, I think, is another good one, David. So I'll defer to you on both of those. The first for Julio, second for Matt Ryan. I think those make a lot of sense. So I will definitely defer to those for you. That's all the questions we're going to hit for tonight. We thank you all so much for putting those in to the chat for us, asking the questions. We really do appreciate it. David, I'm going to give you a last hoorah, whatever you want to say. What do you want to end this podcast on tonight?
I just want to thank everybody again, like I try to do every weekend. I appreciate everybody's support and appreciation of what we put out week in and week out. They go and they download our podcast. They come and watch us live. Like I said, we're averaging about 500 people right now, and we're only on episode 11 that are watching us. And it's just amazing to have people listening, that many people listening to us. So it's really awesome. And again, we're not bringing the typical subjects to the marketplace. We're talking about business of football. We're talking about things that aren't being talked about on mainstream. So I appreciate people, supporting that, so we can continue to do that. And we know that there's a marketplace for it. Absolutely. If you want to know what Mavs Sports Consulting is all about, please drop us a line. Maverick Sports Consulting, I created in 2015. And we've been helping young men in the professional football ranks, learning how to interview prep and take on the tough regular business questions that they weren't prepped for. It's not getting on the board. We can do the board training too, but it's how do you handle the business aspect of football through the coaching up on the interview questions, the follow-up on after an interview. How do you let these men, that the decision makers, know that you're ready to transition from being a collegiate athlete into a professional athlete? And the interview preps are really the key aspects here. And in this time, like we heard all these recruiters tell you, like, they're not sure where you're if you're a 5-star, 4-star recruit, people can't coach you. If you really want an unbridled opinion, I got unbiased opinion, come ask us to watch your film, sign up for the film package, get to know what you offer teams. We'll write up a professional scouting report, much like I did in the NFL for 18 years, and give it to you. There's just so much we can do for young athletes, both men and women, when it comes to this, our skill set and what we do. Just check out mavericksportsconsulting.com and, let us help you. Let us support you in your career and what you're trying to build.
Again, that's mavericksportsconsulting.com. Make sure to check out today to see all the packages and opportunities that they can share with you. Also want to throw out Friday Night Scout School at NFLDraftBible.com. This week we'll be taking a look at interior offensive linemen. That is 9 o'clock Eastern time every Friday. Make sure to sign up again at NFLDraftBible.com. Want to thank you all again so much for all the mailbags. Mike Singer, shout out to BGI for Mike coming on with us tonight to talk a little recruiting and some Notre Dame football. Make sure you like, share, follow, review us on any podcast platform that you use. We really appreciate it. Give us the 5 stars. Just do it. Who cares? Follow us also on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I'm at Rise and Draft. David is at Mav_sports. As always, we thank you all so much. We appreciate you, and we look forward to talking to you again, same time, same place next week. All right.
Not bad. I think that's going to come in